Welcome to the Pinning Combination Podcast. I'm KJ Pilcher alongside Dick Briggs. Ready to talk a little bit of wrestling. Not a lot going on, but it's 2024. Happy New Year, Coach.
Happy New Year. Here we go.
Now we're getting into the thick of the season, aren't we?
Yep.
For all levels.
Right. The
high school, college.
high schools had their time off. We had a little bit going on, and college for that matter, during finals and that sort. But we had some college action. The smaller colleges will kick it in this week and at the NWCA National Duels. And so here we go.
Yeah, big weekend coming up on that front. Let's take a look back. Just a few things since we last talked to you before the Christmas holiday. We've got three tournaments here during the break. With the Southern Scuffle that just finished. You have Midlands and the Soldier Salute. It used to be the Midlands was the biggie. The Southern Scuffle strength, Soldier Salutes in there now. Has it kind of watered down the competition for all three?
Yes, and I think some of the top ranked teams are laying off during the holiday. You didn't really see Iowa State at the Southern Scuffle. UNI wasn't there, or Midlands, and then Penn State, obviously. So some of the top ranked teams just didn't compete. So I'm wondering, a lot of them went to high powered tournaments early on in the season, had some duels. Maybe they're just maybe that's a new trend, is to not have as much, of those high powered meets. All three of those meets were, in your words, watered down. I thought the fields were in some cases weak. I thought the Soldier Salute was, and it's just getting started, but when you're competing with those other two and you got schools that aren't attending, it's hard to get a solid field in there. And I think I asked you that, how many D1 schools had their varsity, their starting lineups there, and you mentioned one, and I had to look, and I don't think it's even a D1 school. And you might have mentioned 6 or 7, was it?
Yeah. I didn't realize you'd asked D1 only. I think maybe Bellarmine is what you're
right. Yeah.
mentioning. That's a D2 school.
Right. D2 school.
That's a D2 school.
I had to look in Kentucky.
Yep.
Yep. So
yeah. The former Hawkeye coach is there, Ned Schock. They also have a former Iowa City West Prep in Grand Odell, so I'm sure that probably factors in a little bit and makes it a reasonable decision to come and compete.
Right.
Right.
So those, the Midlands was, not the glory days, the golden years of the Midlands, when Lee Kemp is beating a Dan Gable sort of thing. And I guess I didn't have it in Midlands, but, those types of that competition, open wrestlers coming in there on Olympic gears and that tournament was the tournament, man. And then the Southern Scuffle for many years was also right up there. And then, this year, I think I said on our last podcast that they only had 6 top 10 ranked kids at that tournament. The highest rank was like maybe a second, maybe a third, something like that, and the rest were kind of lower rankings. So, it's kind of where we're at, and maybe that's what we need to expect, from here on out.
Yeah. Personally, I think there's a lot of potential with the Soldier Salute. I might, maybe I'm in the minority, but you did see Minnesota, North Carolina bring their number one guys. But Luke Eustace talked about how he's building relationships with other coaches, and he, maybe at first they kind of painted him in hawk colors because that's where his background was. He was a national finalist for for Iowa. He was on the coaching staff as director of operations at Iowa, but I think he's more geared towards making this a tournament, a top tournament, with Schomburg, the Iowa City Sports Commission, and everything. So I think there's a lot of potential going forward just because of the the determination of the people that are in charge to make this a really good tournament. And I think on the women's side, they've definitely gotten to that. I tell you, there were some fun matches, and you've got teams, Life and Indiana Tech and Iowa. You know, uh, it was fun. I just think it just needs some more time. You keep adding two varsity teams each time. In a handful of years, it's going to be pretty good if they can continue that growth and really take some leaps and bounds and sell people on this is not just an Iowa tournament. This is college wrestling open.
Well,
And on the backside of that, the other thing I'll add is you mentioned. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as a father of a family that benefited from their direct tournament there on the COVID year 2021 when they had the NWCA, and thank you NWCA for stepping up and bringing that national tournament. But with a son that was not only a participant but a champion there, and proud to have had that opportunity. And I'll always embrace that staff down there. And so that's just what I wanted to chip in there.
For sure, for sure. And I can't remember what else. The other thing I was going to mention too. You mentioned open competitors. Post grads that Midlands seem to have that just kind of dwindled out. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for that, but there are a lot of members from the Hawkeye Wrestling Club that were there, right? Some of them were taking coaching roles for like red shirts or unattached wrestlers, which is cool. But boy, I think it would be a natural for maybe some of those open competitors with the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, with Cyclone Wrestling Club, with the Panther Wrestling Club, which that I think they did have one with Cam Guther, former West Delaware prep, who's I think periodically training with the Panther Wrestling Club. He competed unattached at heavyweight, so it would be nice to see maybe some more take advantage of that. And that might help the field a little.
Right. Obviously Iowa is going to keep some schools away. Your big, like Penn State wouldn't come to a meet that I was at, not this early in the season, nor would Oklahoma State, probably not North Carolina State right now, Michigan probably not, because they're going to compete later on a lot during the season duels and at the tournament. So those types of schools are going to stay away naturally because it's Iowa. But it's that next level of teams that can step up, and then when that happens, those unattached wrestlers as well. But this tournament was nice. That the thing I was looking forward to, and we had talked about this, and I know you were too, KJ, was the Iowa matchups within their own program, both as Hawkeyes and our incoming Hawkeyes. Well, that didn't disappoint, that's for sure.
Yeah, had a couple of those rumored to be coming in. And just generally speaking, on the men's side, Iowa had 8 champs. Drew Ayala at 125, Brody Teskey 33, Real Woods, who talk about one of the marquee matchups. You had 2 top 5 wrestlers there, a returning national finalist, and I can't remember if McNeil is a returning All-American or national qualifier or which, but that was a big one that Real Woods won. 149, Caleb Rachi, one of those two that we'll talk about. Jared Franick at 157. Michael Caliendo, that was a big head-to-head we'll talk about as well. Gabe Arnold at 174. Zach Glazier, we'll talk about that one too at 197. So this was an event that Tom Brands had mentioned. It was gonna separate some, the chaff from the wheat, right? Or whatever that expression is. So we had some head-to-heads. 149 was a big one where Rachi beat Kate Siebrecht and then beat Victor Voinovich in the semis before facing Anthony Ferrari, who a lot of people believe will be part of the program here the second semester. At 165, that was a big one. Patrick Kennedy had been wrestling at 174 this year. He's down to 65, faces Caliendo in the finals, and Caliendo won pretty handily. Not handily, but I think he was always in control. Teskey beat Van D from Nebraska in the finals, who had beaten Colin Shriver in the semis. So I guess at first glance, you're thinking the performances, Teskey, Rachi, and Caliendo have kind of put themselves at that kind of top of the ladder for right now. And we'll see how their results going forward, whether that keeps them there or not. I was impressed with Drew Ayala. He finally got that win over McKee. That was big for him. And then he followed it up with a win against Volk from Wyoming. Now, remember, Volk didn't really challenge Spencer Lee, but took Spencer Lee the distance last year in this event when he was redshirting. Volk's a really, really talented wrestler. That's a quality win for Ayala, and especially having it on the next side of beating McKee for the first time. I think that says a lot about Ayala, even though he still isn't real pleased with his own performance. It's a competitor.
Volka's ranked 7th in what the poll that I was looking at. So I mean, he's obviously a very good wrestler. McKee's all the way down to 20th. I don't know what that's about, because he's a All-American, isn't he? And so you kind of looking, you kind of broke it down the weights. So based on that, I kind of did this. I'm looking at, in my mind, you got 3 locks of the 10 weights. You got 3 locks: Drake Ayala, Real Woods, and Jared Franick are pretty much locks at their weight, I think. Then you've got, as you said, at 133, Teskey, it kind of favors it over Shriver right now, because he, with that common opponent in the finals, that he beat Van D, and Van D beat Shriver. And then you got Rathjen is kind of favored over Ferrari, Voinovich, and Seabrick. And then, at this point in time, but boy, is that a deep weight, right? And then 165, Caliendo now favors over Kennedy with that win. And then at 174, big question mark. Does Arnold take the red shirt off? Do they use him periodically just in the big meets and keep the red shirt on, which I think is what's probably going to happen. But then who steps in at 74? Does Kennedy bump up? Is there someone? Because there was, I don't know who that might be. So, and then at 184, that's a big question mark right now. I'm not sure I have an answer for that one.
Yeah.
In 97, if Ferrari jumps in, then Glazier, if not Glazier wrestled him tight. That's it, so did a nice job there. And then at 285, Hill, who's been doing a nice job. I think he's been doing a nice job, but there's this guy named Ben Keeter, world champ, that might step in, so who knows what might happen there. Or do they use periodically at meets and redshirt him as well? Because he's got, 5 that he can go before the red shirt's off. So lots of questions there that didn't really get answered. Some did and not all of them. So we'll see.
Um, after the finals, I asked Tom Brands about Gabe Arnold, and here was the comment from Gabe. Um, we still have some time with him. Some attached competition that we can wrestle him. I think that it's either one or two. I think it was originally 4 meets that you could wrestle. Now it might be 5.
It's 5.
But we'll see. But he said some attached competition that we can wrestle him where we won't burn the red shirt. We will be very smart with that. He can score points. He's explosive. Is Gabe Arnold. So uh they're still teetering, I think, on what to do. And a lot of it might be what other opponents get plugged into the lineup and how successful they are. Like a Ben Keeter at heavyweight, if he gets plugged in and he has success, how many points is he going to be able to generate at heavyweight? If you know AJ Ferrari ends up becoming a Hawkeye and is the 197 pounder, how many what does he do for points? And what does that do for their stock as far as finishing anywhere from, 1 to 4? Okay, so we'll kind of take a stab at the elephant, in the middle of the room here. The situation with the Ferrari brothers. They're rumored to join the Iowa team in the second semester. On the record, I have not seen anything official, and nobody has really said anything. AJ Ferrari was at an Iowa meet. He posted something about taking an official visit. I believe Anthony has committed. I don't think there is anything signed. And any idea of when it really will come to fruition? Okay, but I think a lot of people are expecting it to happen in January.
Yeah, I think an athlete is official when they start that first day of classes. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's when. So he might be enrolled, but until he starts that first day, until he attends that first class, I think that's how that works. At least that's how it used to. But I'm pretty removed
Okay.
from that.
Okay. And of course, Anthony faced Caleb Rachi in the finals. Rachi won 7-2. Second takedown was at the very end, where Anthony Ferrari was really kind of, not in desperation mode, but you know what I mean. He kind of got overextended, gave up a takedown at the end that just kind of added to Rachi's final. Rachi gets up, a little bit of a shove, even though I didn't see it at first. Don't think it was a big deal. On the way back to the mat, center of the mat, Anthony Ferrari kind of gives him a shove in the back. Nothing really big. Rachi turns to him in the center and gives that AJ Ferrari flex, or Ferrari's flex that sent the crowd up. Some cheering, some booing. But Rachi was really fired up. Afterwards, shortly after the match was over, interviews in the hallway with Rachi. At the end, I asked, there was a lot of some excitement there at the end, and I asked if it was competitive juices or anything else. He goes, competitive juices. Frickin' these guys think they're going to come in here and they're going to be the guys. I had other things to say about that. So, whether or not that was just the heat of the moment, or, if there's a rift, which I think a lot of people think there is between maybe guys coming in and guys that have been in the room for a while. But I didn't think 149 was that big of a deal, with what kind of transpired afterwards. How did you take it?
A couple of things. First of all, we mentioned, I mentioned last podcast that guys aren't going to be happy when people come in from the transfer portal or coach. They're going to feel like coaches recruit over the top of them, or their programs aren't building their own. They're just stealing others, sort of thing. And so those kids that are in that room and loyal to the program are getting feel like they're getting maybe a little trampled or something. So that's, I'm guessing, what the feeling is there. And I can see that. As far as the push goes on both sides, because there was a little push from Rachi, yeah, and that's if we go back into when the brands were wrestling, there was like big pushes. I watched them push a guy. One of the brands push a guy. They went off the mat. The whistle had blown. The bottom man was standing up, and he pushed him and sprained his ankle, and he couldn't wrestle the match anymore. So the brands know about that pushing. And as a high school coach, I had to try and teach, and I know other coaches and officials as well had to try and police the high school kids not to do that. Well, here we are again, and I hope that doesn't transpire again. But so a little push by Rachi, nothing bad, but from the high school coach looking at it sort of view, that's sends a message to high school kids. Oh, I need to do that to do this intimidation thing or something. And but then Ferrari responds with, as Rachi's back walking with his back to Ferrari to the middle, comes up both hands and pushes him in the back. That was blatant. So yeah, if you're going to point anyone there, or you point both of them, I think. But usually the guy that retaliates is the one that gets it and gets called. And so there's a lot going on that didn't seem like a lot, but then it built up to a lot, and so then it moved on to the next
And at 197, that's where the big fireworks were displayed. So Zach Glazier, the starter, had a real good win over Joel's from Minnesota to get to the finals, right? Let's not forget that too. But they're 1-1 at the end of regulation, going to sudden victory with 2 seconds left to go. Ferrari finishes a takedown and wins. And Zach Glazier kind of gets up to his base and pounds on the mat. AJ Ferrari comes around and then kind of presses his head down a little bit. And of course, Zach Glazier responds, gets up, grabs the leg, and pushes him. Ferrari reacts. At first, I thought it was a straight punch. It wasn't. It was kind of a swiping motion more than anything. Not that really makes much difference as far as I'm concerned. And then he flips off Glazier. One thing that I don't think is getting mentioned a lot is the swipe. That makes contact with an official. And not just over the shoulder, that wrapped around. And there's a video from behind the skirmish where that hits the official right here. And a lot of people are upset that he was DQ'd for technical misconduct. Is that correct?
Flagrant
Is that the actual call?
It's flagrant misconduct.
Flagrant misconduct. Okay. But yeah, he didn't mean to, but he essentially hit an official. That's a no-no. That's any sport making any kind of contact with officials is bad, right? So I think the call was correct. Here's one thing I want to ask you about as far as officials, right? Now, from my understanding, or from what I've learned, at least at the high school level, the minute an official walks into the school, he is in charge, right? I didn't realize this. I thought maybe ADs were or whatever, but when officials walk in, they're in charge. And they're in charge until he signs the bout sheet, or now the electronic, sign. Is that correct?
At the high school level, it is. I don't know how it relates at the college level. I would assume the same.
Okay. Because see, that's why a lot of people were so confused about after the match, and it's like the tournament's not done. You can be DQ'd as far as I know, you can be DQ'd anytime the tournament is still going on, whether you're done wrestling or not.
Well, and even
Am
that,
I off on that?
no, you're not off. And I'll go one step closer, further, whatever. That the match isn't even over. Yeah, the match time is over, but there's the procedure after the match that every wrestler is responsible for, shaking hands and and so forth. So that's part of the match procedure. So, but I have two questions or comments about officiating. One, the stall call late in the third period. I did see that, and I thought that was I thought spot on. Ferrari had an opportunity in college. If you back out,
Really?
that's a point. Ferrari had an opportunity to circle on. Instead, he circled off and backed off, and that's stalling. And if he already had a warning on him, that's a point. And so some people are kind of complaining about that. As an official, I see that as the right call. So I think our official Eric Eckerman did a good job on that. Then after the match, I do have a question here. I thought that if a person's DQ'd, that doesn't after the match. I don't know that necessarily awards the other person the match. So the time is out, but so I don't know.
Right.
I just answered my own question, but I thought with the timeout, now time is out, that match is technically over in terms of the time. They still have the handshake procedure, but so I didn't know that necessarily elevated that person that lost, in this case, the case Glazier, to be the champion. So I might have thought that it'd be AJ was disqualified, Glazier stays at number 2, no champion. But I don't know. That's just me. I have not talked to anyone, and I'm curious on that. I'll have to research that a little bit with my college roughing friends.
Well, the thing I'll liken it to is when you've had somebody DQ'd in a tournament and they lose all their team points, their spot on the award stand is empty.
Right.
I've seen that at both the high school and college levels, where guy that got 6 was booted, and they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blank 7, 8. The guy that got 7th didn't move up. So that's where I also question kind of what happened or how it was awarded. That okay, if he's DQ'd, he's not the champ, but Glazier's still a runner up.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That's what I was thinking. So, and it's something that hasn't.
So I was surprised when they raised Glazier's hand.
Right, and it's something in Eckerman's defense. It's just something that doesn't happen. I don't know that I've ever seen that at the championship level. The winner gets flagrant misconduct, and so it's I'm sure if he miscalled it, it's because he's probably never seen it, and it certainly will be, if he called it right, then he's on and he's spot on. But that one was one of my questions there, and I just did you go further after the match? Did you, with your story with the Ferrari, what he did after with the splits? And
I did not get to that where he did the splits and then flipped off the crowd because they reacted with a lot of boos and then cheering for Glazier. I think that rubbed him the wrong way, and then he did his splits and flipped off the crowd. I tweeted something afterwards that I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
I've seen somebody flip off a crowd, right here in Carver Hawkeye Arena, Oklahoma State's Alan Gelagayev. You remember him? He was like a 97 pounder or 90 pounder, 97 pounder heavyweight for Okie State one year. When he was walking off the Carver mat, he flipped off the Carver crowd. I've seen that before. I've seen people throw punches afterwards. But the whole dynamic of where, this is somebody that's kind of had, wrestling taking away from him. And here he's getting a second chance. And he's wrestling for the first time in 2 years. And he's wrestling against, when they were in the back warming up, they're right around the Iowa team. Not with the Iowa team, but near them, right? So they're together in some fashion. He's got Hawkeye Wrestling Club members in his corner. And, this is the team that they're expecting him to join, and all that happens. That's what I meant by that's the first time I ever saw it. Just the whole situation, how that uh ended, it was just so bizarre.
Right.
So strange.
And so by doing that, AJ, he alienates probably 80% of the Iowa fan base and 100% of those that aren't Iowa fans.
Yeah.
They already didn't like Iowa. They think Iowa is cocky and so forth. So they're going to, this is just more reason to tack on the hate for Iowa. But, so now this puts, this is an interesting situation because they're not on the team yet. And they have the younger brother who's committed to Iowa. So we're talking, three Ferraris in, some stage or another. And so now you've got, who knows what the conversations have been before in terms of, if there's any scholarship offers, or I don't even know. I don't know about NIL, but that could be offered, that sort of thing. But, so here's a guy that hasn't enrolled, two guys that haven't even enrolled yet. And now they're already up in arms with the fan base, and the coaches are in that tough spot. If you take them in and this happens again, this explodes again, which is, it could happen, very well could happen. It's just now they look greedy. The coaches look greedy because we've got these talented wrestlers, but bringing them in with no ethics or whatever. And so it's just a tough spot for the coaches to be in, and the Ferraris, really the doors are closing with their opportunities. They get, especially AJ, who got left at Oklahoma State. I don't know if he was kicked out or if he left on his own, but certainly not in the program anymore. If the door closes with Iowa, other schools are looking at this and going, no, I don't think I want to touch that sort of thing. So this is maybe AJ's last chance. He may have slammed the door shut on himself. So we'll see how this plays out. But those are the situations. This is where it's kind of at. It's a tough situation for the coaches to be in. The athlete put himself there, and his family and brother maybe. So brothers. So it's just, I don't know. We'll see how that plays out.
So my first thought was this was taking a torch to the bridge, right? I called and talked to you that night and just thought there's no way. There's absolutely no way that this goes forward. Get to thinking about it now. We'll say that AJ Ferrari did kind of issue a quasi apology on Instagram. Whether that was something that was encouraged for him to do, or if he did that on his own volition, we'll never know. But there was kind of that him saying he was disappointed in his actions, and people of Iowa have been good to him and stuff like that. So trying to smooth things over. But the other thing that comes to mind that makes me think that this is still a thing that's going to happen is I think Terry Brands and Tom Brands kind of have this redeeming, they believe in the redeeming quality of wrestling, right? Where they want to work with people. You saw it with some wrestlers in the past. They've tried to do this with there was a guy from George Mason once that went to Cale Byers was his name. I'm trying to remember that they were trying to work in. He had some issues. He ended up going to Oklahoma State in wrestling. And then there's the Pat Downey deal, whether he was going to be a Hawkeye or not. That didn't work out. Montel Marion came back. And I know Montel Marion was somebody that Terry had worked with a lot at the OTC and stuff like that. And when he was at Iowa, what they do is they surround him by, with some of the other people in the on the team. Like I think Montel Marion and like Matt McDonough spent a lot of time with Montel, just kind of, kind of having good influences around him. You look at Austin DeSanto and how Spencer Lee was around him. Now these are different categories, right? Not the same type of infractions that maybe A.J. Ferrari was accused of and stuff in the past. But so you've seen them kind of have this, you can help somebody find redemption through wrestling. So I think that's something that comes into play here. Now, here's the thing. The youngest Ferrari brother, Angelo Ferrari, who's at Melissa, Texas, I believe. He's like the number one pound for pound recruit in his class. How much of all this is a package deal to where, if we cut ties with AJ or Anthony or both, or if they both leave, do they lose Angelo too? That's something that has to be considered as well. And what's the price to pay to make sure, you at least get one of those, one of those brothers, Angelo,
Well,
so that has to factor in.
right. And I was kind of hitting towards that. That's that tough position that Tom and Terry, frankly, are in. And, as your comment, they like to be the ones that can help a guy. I don't know any coach in the nation that doesn't want to do that in any sport, hopefully, that doesn't, I've had plenty of kids
Right.
on my team that I've thought, boy, this kid needs Russell more than Russell needs him. I'm going to fight for this kid, sort of thing, and help try and keep them a part of this program and these kids that they're around and the adults that they're around and so yeah, everyone wants to do that, but this is a little bit tougher situation because of what he did towards the Iowa fan base directly, and his I read that quasi, is that what you said, quasi apology?
Yeah.
There was no apology in it. It was just him being regretful. And so, hey, fans aren't dumb. They're seeing that as well. And so, so my point is that the coaches are now in this situation where if they fail and he goes off the deep end again, they're, and maybe if they even bring him on, I don't want to put Anthony in the same spot. AJ is the one kind of painting it here, but if they bring AJ on, then I think that the Brands coaches, they stand to lose a little bit of their fan support here. So it's just a tough situation, so we'll see how, like I said, how it plays out, and maybe they'll bring him on and everything will be good, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're just going to have to see. Like I said, I don't know exactly how this thing is. One of the reasons, it's just, we'll get into some of the other things later about why it's hard to try to get answers later, but just we probably won't see till maybe the Minnesota duel on January 15th as far as who's included and how things play out. There is Nebraska on January 12th, but I think that's before classes actually start. Um, so they have that Monday duel, which is Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, um, where they wrestle Minnesota in an odd or an unusual or rare Monday night wrestling duel. So
Right.
we'll see there, or maybe even that Friday against Purdue.
Now to clear it up, they could, I believe, if they're enrolled, wrestle on the 12th because the semester has ended. They could have actually
Okay.
wrestled, but I don't know. So yeah, they could wrestle, or they don't have to wait till the term starts. But that's when that I think when they step into the classroom, that's when they're locked in, and they're now an Iowa student. So yeah, that's interesting. Now I know maybe it's too soon to go this, but I did want to mention too at 174 that was just weird, and I was actually frankly disappointed with Gabe Arnold. At the end of the match, he's wrestling a Columbia wrestler, and with 5 seconds left, would you say he's like multiple times, not just one little pat on the butt, but he did about 10 times on the butt as he's on top of him riding. Kind of,
Oh,
he's up.
that was in this.
Was that semifinals?
I think that was the semifinals against Nebraska. Yeah.
Sorry, that was Nebraska. You're right. It was semifinals. I watched too many matches. And anyway, then so that was just weird. And I'm like, that's uncalled for. And again, as a high school coach, kids are seeing that and going, now we're gonna have to try and stop by guys from, it was almost an invasion of the bottom wrestler's privacy, is what it was. So I was disappointed with that with Gabe. It seems like he's better than that.
Yeah, but I didn't live. I just saw the video. So I agree. Let's shift over to the women's side here quickly. I tell you what, I really like the women's side of this tournament. They kind of wrestle round robin and then they kind of have like a semi final. If I kind of interpreted how things played out, but Iowa comes away with 5 champs. Sterling Diaz, 101, Ava Bayless at 109, Brianna Gonzalez at 116. You have Bella Nago. Um, she was a runner up at 123, as was Emily Frost at 130 and Lily Luft at 136. Um, Riesler Mendy was runner up at 143. Bella Mir, um, many people will remember that she's the daughter of Frank Mir, the former MMA champ. Haley Ward was Iowa's last champ at 170, and then Olivia White was a runner up at 191. And I tell you what, that even though it didn't work out in Lara Mendy's favor, she wrestled Jamila McBride. McBride, learning from Win Magazine's Mike Finn. There are 3 McBride sisters from Life University that I think all were in the finals. I think one was a champ and or 2 were champions, and then one was a runner-up. So 3 really talented sisters. But Jamila McBride and Riesler Mendy, right? You always talk about the fur flying. They combined for 42 points. And I
Oh,
know it's freestyle, it's different than folk style, but it was 22-20 when Jamila McBride got the fall with 2 seconds to go in the match. But I'm telling you what, that was one of the more exciting matches, and that's going on, while one of the guys' matches is going, and you're kind of watching past the guys' match to see them just stockpiling points, Randy Lewis style. you know, there are some high amplitude moves. Um, I just really exciting match there between McBride Larramendi, but really good showing overall for the Iowa women.
Right. I mean, 5 champs, 5 runner-ups, and 10 weights. That's pretty darn good. And then
Yep.
the Life, who was in second place, had 3 champs, a runner-up, and 4 thirds. So they had a nice showing as well, like you said. Really the 2 top teams in the nation are Iowa, ranked number 1, and North Central, Division III school, ranked they're ranked number 2. So, and both have, I think, 3 or 4 number 1 ranked wrestlers in the nation. So,
oh wow!
So that's going to be fun to see that when we get to that national championship competition there. So, anyway, yeah, I agree with you. And then the one thing about points being scored in freestyle, it's a slow reaction as to when they actually determine how many points are, because you got 3 officials. You got the official out on the mat judge, and the mat chairman. And it has to go, if the official throws up maybe a 2, and then the mat judge throws up a 4, and now the chairman has to determine what is it, 2 or 4. And he only gets to choose 2 or 4. He can't even go 0. And so anyway, so it's a slow. It's not like hold up to a referee and then put it on the board. It's like it has to go through this process. So that's interesting to see all of those points scored and happen quickly. So yeah, it's freestyle is a different animal, and I like freestyle, but I love folk style. Yep.
Well, let's use this as a transition to this this upcoming week with the national duels. The National Wrestling Coaches and Association bringing the multi-divisional national duels back to Iowa. They'll be at the Unidome this Friday and Saturday. The Iowa women, I believe the top seed, as you mentioned, North Central being number 2. We saw, North Central here in Cedar Rapids, and, they've got some world-class talent on their team. So, just a strong field. 96 teams, I believe, up at the Unidome, between women's and men's D2, D3, all that kind of stuff.
Is there just one? In the past, there's been 2. I failed to look at the women. I apologize for that. 2 divisions for the women. Is there just 1 division this year? There was like NAIA maybe, and
there's NAIA women, and then the NCAA women.
Right. So there's 2 divisions there.
Divisions there.
And then there's divisions. So there's 2 there. And then you've got Division 2, Division 3. There's 4 divisions. And then you've got NAIA men's and a little bit of junior college. So how many is that? 4, 5, 6 different, 6 or 7 different groups that are wrestling. So yeah, it's easy to, I think the biggest is Division 3. There's 23 schools in it this year. I believe Division 2, the brackets aren't out yet, and it's frustrating because I want to see them. But I tried to build them myself. And I think there's 16 teams in Division 2, 23. I don't know if one backed out or what, but that was fortuitous, I guess, because Co slipped in there. They were not one of the top 8 seeds, but they slipped in there, and they'll be wrestling the 6th seed. So they don't have a first round meet. So that's kind of good for Co, I guess. But here since I was talking about it, I can follow up. I do have that bracket with the Division 3 team. I can go through that, KJ, if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so on the top half of the bracket, Augustana has the bye. They'll wrestle the winner of Cornell or Olivet. Cornell's coming off of the Citrus Open. They did pretty well down there at the Citrus Open. So they'll if they beat Olivet, they'll have number 1 seeded and number 1 ranked Augsburg. In that top quarter, then Co and Johnson of Wales will not have a first round match. They'll meet in the second round, and Johnson of Wales is a 6th seeded team there. So that's a beatable team. So Co can, if they're on they can knock off Johnson Wales, and then they would wrestle presumably Augsburg, #1 seed. And then in the bottom of that top half is Baldwin Wallace is the #5 seed. They'll have a bye, and they'll wrestle the winner of Concordia, Wisconsin, or Luther. Luther will be wrestling Concordia of Wisconsin, and then if they win, they'll wrestle Baldwin Wallace. In the bottom of that quarter, UD, University of Dubuque, will be wrestling Concordia Moorhead, and the winner will wrestle North Central, who's the 4th seed. On the bottom half of the bracket, the #3 seed Wisconsin Lacrosse will wrestle the winner of RIT or Milliken. And then Castleton, the #6 seed, will wrestle the winner of Marymount or Whitewater, University of Wisconsin Whitewater. And then #7 seeded TCNG and NJ, the College of New Jersey, will wrestle the winner of Aurora or Wabash. And then Wartburg seeded #2, they'll wrestle the winner of Loris or Alfred State. So all of our area D3 schools are in the tournament, so good for them for being there and competing. I did want to mention this. This is kind of neat. I'm gonna do a sidebar here on the University of Dubuque. I was looking at their team picture today, and in the team picture, it's a combined men's and women's picture. But in the team picture, you have two Olympic silver medalists in their team picture as coaches. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. The head women's coach is Dennis Hall. He's a 3-time and a silver medalist in Greco-Roman of all. I mean, we don't have very many
Greco-Roman stud
medalists, and so he's the head women's coach and assistant men's coach. And then a guy named Barry Davis, you might have heard of him before. Cedar Rapidian. And I think he's volunteering and helping up there at times. Of course, Barry was a multi-time state champ for Prairie, and then that Wisconsin head coach for many years. So both of them are Hall of Fame members. So that's my sidebar on the University of Dubuque. And you know what? The University of Dubuque has shown pretty darn good improvement this year. They were 4th in a 17-team tournament and 3rd in a 14-team tournament, and they haven't had any duels yet, but good for them. So
it's good to see Barry Davis back in coaching. I know after he left Wisconsin, he was kind of doing the company thing and kind of in the corporate world a little bit, and it's good to see him back working with a program there with McGovern and Hall and those guys.
A couple of years ago, he told me that I don't know if it's still true or not, that his boss's son was on the team, and I think he was helping coach him. But that was a couple of years ago, so I don't know if he's still on it or not. So, but he's still in the picture, literally.
Yeah, right. Just looking at the D2 programs that are there. I think this is a mix of men's and women's, but the D2 level, obviously Upper Iowa, Central Oklahoma, West Liberty, Lander, who's done amazing things since they started their program. They're only a few years in, and they're one of the top programs in D2. Lake Erie, St. Cloud State, Nebraska Kearney, Indianapolis, McKendree, Ashland, Augustana, South Dakota, Glenville State, Newberry, the University of Mary, Tiffin, Northern State, and of course we mentioned the Peacocks of Upper Iowa in the D2 field. NAIA.
One comment, KJ. I tried to build the Division II bracket, and it was so squirrely to me with what they have on track wrestling trying to build it. It looks like Central Oklahoma is the #1 seed, but they're the 4th ranked team in the nation. Lander's the #1 ranked team, and they're the 3rd seed in this tournament. Upper Iowa is the #9 ranked team, and they drew Central Oklahoma first round. So I mean, I don't understand. So I don't know
Yeah.
if they, I don't know, the seedings just didn't make sense based on the coaches' rankings. That's the NCAA coaches' rankings too, dual rankings. So
Yeah.
I was confused on
Yeah.
that.
That's kind of strange.
But Upper Iowa does have Central Oklahoma first round. So based on what they
That'll be
say.
a tough one for them right out of the gate. The NAIA field, Grandview, Life, um, kind of high headline things a little bit. They've had some battles on the men and women's side. Southeastern, Campbellsville, Kentucky, Menlo, California, Doane, Indiana Tech, Providence, Montana, Ottawa University, uh, Cumberland's in Kentucky, Southern Oregon, Oklahoma City, Central Methodist, Marian University out of Indiana, Graceland, and then William Penn, who had some women at the Soldier Salute, where I believe Jake Cadle and Cash Wilkie are have moved from Iowa Wesleyan to William Penn um, to continue their coaching careers um, as well. But yeah, I mean, this event has kind of bounced around. Glad it's back in Iowa. It produces some really exciting duels, especially once you get to the semis and even the quarters. You know, um, so this should be a fun 2 days up in Cedar Falls.
Right, and it's in the dome, and there'll be I don't know exactly how many mats, but I'm guessing between 20 and 30 mats spread across the dome floor, and so it's fun to see that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Uh, any other college items before we tee it off? And
I guess one just this at the on the girls' side at the Soldier Salute, the University of Dubuque did have a medalist in Alex Hoffrichter at 155. So I'd like to mention that as well. So I mean,
sure.
kind of get that in there. And I guess the next competition, you already mentioned that Iowa has Nebraska on the 12th. You and I will be at Nebraska on the 6th, this Saturday. They'll be wrestling
Oh wow.
Nebraska and Wyoming both. And then Iowa State is at ASU on Friday, and then Cal Baptist, which is up in northern Colorado and Walnut, and that's on Sunday. So anyway, Cornell, the Citrus Open did have a champion at 197. Trayton Steffen was first, and that's their first one in I think 4 years, first champ there. So they
wow.
had a runner up at 84, Cale McLaren, and then 6 others were in the top 8. So good showing down there.
Definitely for the Rams. So he teed it up with Briggs. What do you got for us here to start 2024?
All right, here's my rant. All right, it's pony up or shut up, or at least be civil. Reading on, as I'm reading online responses to the poor Iowa football bowl game performance. I mean, who hasn't? Many people place blame on a couple of easy targets. What's the easiest target? The quarterback. And the posters were not kind to Deacon Hill. Backup quarterbacks come in. The backup quarterback comes in and scrambles for some yardage. I did see some passes that didn't look very good. That's Marco Lainez. And suddenly he's the new hope. I'm going, man, I got to respect the coach's opinion that, yeah, maybe Lainez can scramble a little bit. Hill might have a better arm. Not sure with his decisions, but I mean, it's a tough job. So that's kind of my point, the quarterback position. Okay, we talked about the NIL in an earlier podcast, and it's here to stay, like it or not. Of those thousands, and I'm telling you, thousands of negative posters, many that use a burner account that keeps their identity, anonymous. I wonder how many of those people are contributing any money towards the Iowa NIL Swarm Collective. So everyone can get out there and put their opinion and maybe be hurtful in their words, but not anyone will pony up and help with that. So college athletics and athletes have become a professional business. Let's face it. If you want a 5-star quarterback and a line to protect them, you better be able to contribute to the swarm. I don't like where college athletics, where it is right now and where it's headed. I mean, good example are the bowl games. People are opting out, for whatever, just different things going on. And that's a different discussion. Anyway, I'm afraid it will reach into the high school ranks, and it kind of already has. I've heard, in some instances at football level. And lastly, I wonder how much gambling is affecting the fan bases of these schools, with their comments and their decisions and getting all irate instead of being civil. So my comment is, let's be civil online, people. Say it like you would say it to their face. It just gets really old. So,
No, I
man.
agree. We talked earlier. I'm gonna piggyback on that just a little bit. From some of the things, some of the fallout with the A.J. Ferrari, Zach Glazier, dust up after their final at the Soldier Salute. I always do my best to stay away from message boards, and I've really fallen out of love with social media here in recent years, just because the tones and responses you know can be negative, and you don't know who's usually it doesn't come with a name like you kind of mentioned. But I'll just give you some background. I started the Gazette in 1999. I started in advertising to try to see if I could snake my way into sports. I was just out of college. Well, not just out of college. I worked in a factory for about 6 months, worked in advertising. Sports has always been a huge part of my life, whether competing, coaching, whatever. Um, and I got that opportunity in October of 1999. I worked as an ag editor. So, in other words, I was punching in scores and more, all that, all those box scores and stuff that they don't necessarily run as much of. That's what I did. I got my first beat in 2001. I started covering wrestling in the 2002-03 season, which was the sophomore year of the group with Jay Borschel, Joey Slayton, Mitch Mueller, Ryan Morningstar, Chad Beatty, those guys, right? 2009, I went down for the last day of the NCAA championships, helped out J.R. Ogden with that coverage. Next year, that ended up being JR's last full-time finals or college season, and I took that over in 2010. So for the last 13, 14, 15 years, what have you. Okay. I've the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've devoted a lot of time to wrestling on different levels. Over the last 2 to 3 days, I've read comments, not just from fans, but from journalistic colleagues who indirectly called me a coward, a disgrace, said I was negligent. And that stems from the fact I was part of the scrum that interviewed Tom Brands after the Soldier Salute and did not ask about the dust up at the end of the Zach Glazier A.J. Ferrari match. So I'm gonna share my reasoning with this. Okay. A.J. Ferrari, as far as I know, is not somebody that signed with the University of Iowa. My interpretation is if they're not somebody that has signed on the dotted line, coaches cannot talk about. Now, after starting to see some of the response, I texted a colleague who said, well, does that really include, the aftermath of just, two guys getting into it like that, and his thoughts on that situation. And it's like, well, you got a point, you know, maybe I could, maybe that was how I should have handled it. Maybe it was. And trust me, there's nobody that second guesses themselves more than I do, and you know, I really think you know, I'm hard on myself when it comes to certain things. Here's the thing, you know, it's real easy when you're sitting in a seat or sitting on your couch and you're not involved in the things from day to day to throw out really, I don't want to sound like a whine ass or a baby, but when you're sending out hurtful things about people that have sacrificed a ton to provide content to promote a sport that means a ton to them, you know, it's been a tough few days. Now, part of it, maybe I do feel like, yeah, you know what? I screwed up. Damn it. I should have. But you talk about the negative comments and stuff like that for players. Well, it exists for riders too. And let's face it, uh, media is looked at in a whole different light than when I even started. Um, it's harder to get people to talk to harder to get interviews. It's harder to be able to just do our job on a day-to-day basis. And then to turn around and have, a lot of vileness talked about the people that are in that scrum and doing those things. You know what? It just gets old. And I'll be 100% honest. In August, I was 1 foot out the door because of some stuff like this. There are other factors too, but you know, you've been around me long enough. Um, you know how much effort gets put into this and how tough it is behind the scenes to try to do certain things. The last thing, I think people understand is when they go off on that, what actually goes on and all the circumstances that factor in. And I understand people want to know this and people want to know that. But then you look at Kim Mulkey and you try to ask questions like that, and she says you're not entitled to that information. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, and you can't make either side happy. And it just gets old after a while. And you're gonna chase away people that actually care about the sport, and they already have. Um, you know, I know some people that are retiring and ready to be done with coverage. Um, and I don't know. Maybe that's maybe I'm being self pitying or what have you. But just the carry on the back of that, kind of dealt with some of that negative stuff online. And again, you know, not just from fans and readers, but colleagues who I know I've been in the same scrums with them, and they've never pulled the trigger either. So that's just my 2 cents with things. But
Right.
we move forward, right? No?
Oh yeah, folks. I'm going to say this. This is an award-winning journalist that we're dealing with right here, KJ Pilcher, and we're lucky to have him. Certainly in Eastern Iowa, and covering the college beat with the University of Iowa. They're lucky to have him. They may not always appreciate him, but coaches in the high school ranks and coaches at the university. But man, this guy works his tail off, and I respect him now even more that I'm out of coaching than I ever did when I was, and I respect him a ton then. And it goes back beyond that. It goes beyond KJ. It goes to J.R. Ogden, who is also a wrestling man and allows the Gazette to keep KJ on those beats and
Right.
covers and puts stuff into the newspaper and online, and it allows us to do this. And we're lucky. And if you if you don't think we are, if it goes away, then you're going to miss it a lot. I'm telling you that right now. And so I'm just saying this, people. That's my hope. One of my points on my tee it off today was let's be more sensitive with our online statements, and don't just get on there and do a knee jerk reaction. I read something that it's 2 hours after the fact that people are being morons. I'm just going to say it. And then, like this year, complaining about the football game while the game's going on, and then they end up winning it. It's like, now how do if you go back and look at that statement now, you look dumb. And so, my proposal is say online what you'd say to their face. And, if you can stand up and say that to their face, then that'll say something about you, maybe one way or another. So, but don't cower on it. Be kind. That's just what I'm asking.
Yeah, very, very few. I will say probably had a couple people that have come up to me face to face to say some things over the years. Um, I'll credit this as a longtime Hawkeye supporter, Bob Dane.
Mm.
I've had Bob Dane come up to me and say, "Hey, man, what were you doing with this?" Or why didn't you ask this? And it's like, gosh, yeah, well, this is what I was thinking, or I fumbled. I wasn't thinking at the time, or sometimes not so much now because deadlines are different. But back then, deadlines sometimes you're just in a fury and you're trying to get back and try to file something before the deadline hits, and but always respected Bob Dane because we have conversations face to face about stuff like that. You don't get that from message boards or some social media people. And not that I'm not trying to cry or whine about it. It's just that, man, sometimes it's just unnecessary.
Yep. Good for Dana.
But
He's a good man.
yeah, he really is. Okay, so let's close things up. We've gone a little bit longer than we thought we would today for various reasons, but let's just look ahead really quick. We're going to be at City High on Thursday. Big duel, Linmar City High. Some really high level talent there on both sides. So that should be a fun duel on Thursday. We got boys and girls, right?
Boys and girls, and at least on the boys' side, I haven't looked quite yet at the girls' side yet, but we have some, assuming the coaches don't change or shift, and I don't see them doing that too much in this, but we'll have a one weight, a number 1 versus number 3, and a couple other highly ranked matchups as well. So it'll be a good meet to watch, and I don't know how close it'll be. I think it'll be very close, but we'll see. Right now, it looks like going to be a honey.
And then this weekend, some of the beats, Linmar, they jump right in against City High on Thursday, and then they turn around and host their dual tournament, line duels on Saturday. And part of that field is Mount Vernon. Very well could have was it number 5 Linmar versus number 2 or Mount Vernon, in that tournament as well. So 2 really good duels for Linmar, possibly in the 3-day stretch there.
Right, and Linmar's had a tough schedule to begin with in the first half of they certainly haven't avoided tough competition. So, and here we are again. So, yeah, it should be a fun weekend. I'll be at Anamosa there, and then I think on Friday I'm going to try and wander up to the Dome and watch that. So,
I will be covering the national duels on Friday up at the Unidome. John Steppe is going to go on Saturday. He's coming back from bowl coverage for football, and he's been covering the Iowa women, so he'll go up on Saturday. I will be able to go to Benton Community for the Eckenrod. That's always one of my favorite tournaments to cover. You got some really good teams from Central Iowa, Don Bosco, West Delaware, part of the field there. So So go ahead. So we'll have coverage from the Bobcat as well. Is the Mendenhall this weekend too, or is that next weekend? The
Uh,
names.
I I think it's this weekend. I did
I
not
think
look.
it's this weekend as well too. So a
No,
lot of good tournaments coming up right out of the break.
right, because we used to go to the Mendenhall and then we got out of that and went to the Benton Community. So I believe I'm pretty sure it's this weekend.
So um so keep an eye out for that here as action picks up on the second half of the season. Any parting shots, Coach Briggs, as we finish up our first pinning combination of 2024?
Let's have fun, I guess.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us here at the start of the new year. Look forward to seeing you each week here going forward again. And Coach Briggs, why don't you take us out and finish things off?
Let's keep wrestling on the move.
Thanks for watching, everybody.